Right, good evening everybody, and welcome to tonight's cabinet meeting. Just please be aware that this is a public meeting and is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. Just a gentle reminder around the general etiquette for remote meetings, if we can follow that please. And your microphone should be on mute unless you're speaking, obviously to avoid the background noise. Again, if you could raise your hand if you want to speak. If you use the raise hand in the chat function, then that will stay raised until you've been called to speak, and then you'll be able to then lower your hand, and we'll do it in that way tonight. Okay, so if we can then start with the roll call. So this will be a roll call to say that you're here, and also a roll call to, at the same point in time, to declare any interests that you have at that point in time. So over to you, James.
Right, I'll run through the names. Councillor Sean Vincent.
Yes.
Can you confirm you're here?
I'm here. Yep.
Any declarations?
No.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Present and no declarations.
Right. Councillor Copplestone.
Here, I'm in receipt of the business support grant. The BVR runs through my ward of Coltershall, and I'm also the Armed Forces Covenant Champion. Thank you.
Councillor Emsell.
Here, nothing to declare.
Okay. Councillor Hempsell.
I'm here, nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Leggett. Councillor Leggett.
Present and no declaration.
And Councillor Wymark.
Present, declaration as previously that the Bure Valley Railway runs through my division as County Councillor. Thank you.
Okay. And the other councillors who are here are Councillor Riley. Can you confirm you're here? Councillor Catchpole.
Yes, I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Karen Vincent.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Nurden.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So then moving on to tonight's agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We don't have any apologies, no.
All here, that's good. Moving on to item 3 then, minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March. Can I take those as a accurate record of our meeting and sign those off? I'll take them on block. So if there's anybody has any issues, if you could raise the hand in the chat box. No, there's no hands up. So all those in favour of those minutes, do you want to now raise your hands in the chat box, see if that works?
3, 4, 6, 7. That's unanimous.
Here, that's good. Okay, so if you can all lower your hands, and Les Lee can do that in one go, which might be a bit challenging. No, they're all gone. Well done. Okay, so are there any matters arising for anyone in those minutes? No, can't see any hands up. Okay, good. Any public speaking?
There's no public speaking, no.
Okay, thank you for that. We've got some non-cabinet members on the line tonight. So again, if you wish to speak or wish to participate, again, if you could raise your hand. And if I'm so inclined, I might let you speak tonight. So you can chance your arm and see where you get to. Now, on a serious note, if you could raise your hand, and then I'll bring you in at the right point in time. Over to you on overview and scrutiny. Steve, anything you want to say at this point in time, or would you rather come in as we go through? You're muted, Steve.
I'm trying to unmute you, Steve, but it won't let me.
Can anyone help Steve out?
Yeah, it won't let me unmute him, Chairman.
Oh.
Can you do it, Steve? No. Okay. Well, if I take it that you'll let me know when you want to come in, obviously the problem's going to be getting you in at that point in time. So hopefully we'll be able to fix it between now and if there's any points when you want to come in. So the other option might be to disconnect and see if you can reconnect and see if that solves it for you. If you want to give that a go. Oh, you're clear.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been hitting the unmute box 10 times. It's just popped up. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would come in on the parts of the Cabinet agenda where we have ONS amendments to recommend. So at that point, Chair, I'll sort of come in when we come to recommendations.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Steve. That moves us on then to Economic Success Panel. So over to you, Judy.
Or me even, Sean.
Yeah, even you. So over to you, Joe.
Lovely, thank you. We held the Economic Success Panel on the 15th of May, talking mainly about our COVID business recovery plan and Operation Beacon. That started yesterday, and I want to thank all of the staff for doing an amazing job, mainly in Aylsham, but we are looking forward to the scheme rolling out to Reetham, Acle, and slightly further afield across the district. So I just want to recommend to Cabinet to support Operation Beacon, to continue to support that. We have established the discretionary grant fund last week, which is 1.2 million. And point 3, to recommend to assist residents in rural poverty access to full fibre broadband through the Council's Hardship Fund. And please could I ask that Hardship Fund is changed, please. It should read the Community Infrastructure Fund, please. So that's what we'd be looking to get contributions from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe. We all just now need to vote on that, I assume. Do we, Emma?
Yes, please, Chairman. If I can ask if there's any questions, or we can ask James to do a roll call on that. Yes, please.
Are there any questions from anybody? No? Okay, so over to you, James.
Right. Can you confirm if you support the proposal? Councillor Copplestone.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Emsell.
Yes.
Councillor Hempsell.
Support, yes.
Councillor Leggett.
Yes.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
Yes, 4.
Councillor Vincent.
4.
And Councillor Wymark.
4.
That's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. So that will move forward. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda. So this is the review of the 2020-2021 budgets. Item 9, starting on page 25. We starting with you, Rodney, or are we starting with Trudy?
I'm quite happy to take us through the paper, and then Trudy can add comments as she sees fit.
Okay, please do then, Rodney.
So thank you very much. So very much with the impact on COVID, it's important for the council to review its budgets to make sure we take account of the impacts on this council. So very much this report does that. So just want to take you through quickly some of the key information in this report. Very much section 2 is showing the impact on our income budgets. So this is where we're suggesting that our income will be hit by about £430,000 this year, and therefore we should be adjusting our budgets downwards to take account of these reduced income levels. Should just point out, particularly with something like the planning income, although we're saying we'll be getting less income this year, developers are still keen to actually develop in the district, so it's more likely that this income will just be deferred as opposed to lost forever. But very much we are asking members to agree to reduce our income budgets this year in the light of COVID-19. Section 3 of the report very much says about our expenditure. So obviously COVID will have an impact on our expenditure budgets. So we're asking for a £250,000 increase to provide a general allowance for COVID-19 costs, and an additional £250,000 specifically for the costs of dealing with homelessness and making sure there's no one left out on the streets at this time. So again, we're asking for those changes to the budgets. There's some other areas indeed that there's some pressures on our budgets. The first one has just been mentioned, is about making sure our towns and villages are ready to open and ready for business again. And this is where the government has given, or the government in consultation with the European Fund has made available £116,000 worth of funding to help support this work. So very much we're asking members to note this funding. If it comes to pass that we actually need more funding than that to actually make sure all our areas can reopen as necessary, then we'll come back to a later meeting for that. Next area where the council has been hit is very much about council tax support. So obviously there's been a number of people who've been made redundant at this point in time, and we've already seen a 70% increase in the number of claims we've had for council tax support. As furlough ends, we're also expecting this number to change over time and increase. So again, we're asking members to agree an increase in this budget to cope with the expected increase in demand. So those very much are the areas where we're expecting money to be needed to fund extra expenditure in the budget. So very much it's a 500,000 for additional expenditure budgets, and additional £224,000 for council tax support. The fourth section of this report is very much about the impact on Broadland growth, because obviously Broadland growth is an important element for the council and very much supports our economic development programme. So obviously we've been in discussion with Broadland growth, and they've reviewed their plans, and they still confirm that they're aiming to deliver their plan of between 50 and 100 dwellings each year. There obviously are some risks in this with the potential decline in the housing market, but at the moment this is being monitored. So at the moment, we're just asking members to note that the Broadland growth is still on track and there's no issues to report. The fifth section of this report is very much about discretionary areas for additional funding. So as you'll be aware, the council has received in total 1.3 million of additional government funding from government. And actually we've had some requests to spend some of this money, which I'd like to take members through. First of all, about hardship. Obviously, a number of our residents are incurring significant hardship, and we're doing what we can to support them. We've allowed £100,000 to make direct payments to individuals in distress, and actually this budget is at the moment considered to be adequate. The one area where we do think is under pressure is where we've been asked to reduce all council tax bills for working age people by £150. So far, we expect to award £442,000 under this scheme, but we only received £637,000 in financial support to cover this. As we top-sized £100,000 to make the direct payment scheme, this only leaves us £95,000 to cover any other claims that will come in for the remainder of the year. As mentioned previously, we have been seeing an increase in the demand for council tax support, so we're expecting this budget to be exceeded, and therefore we're asking members to provide for an additional £100,000 to cover this cost pressure. The next area I just want to move on to is about the Bure Valley Railway. So the railway pays us £30,000 a year in rent, and they've been closed for a number of months now due to COVID-19, and they've approached us to ask if we could waive the rent. This is a matter that was considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and they're very much keen that the council make sure when we consider this, we also consider the impact on similar businesses in the area. They also suggested that we approached the Bure Valley Railway to understand their plans. And indeed, since the Overview and Scrutiny meeting, our Director of Place has actually been in communication with the Bure Valley Railway, and they have provided additional information to support their request for the waiving of the £30,000 rent. So I'd ask members to consider whether or not you can support the decision or the desire to waive that rent this year. The next area very much looking is at broadband. Obviously, at the moment, people are relying on broadband for homeschooling and indeed for working from home. As you'll be aware, the council has made significant contributions in the past to better broadband, but obviously there is potentially more that could be done. So again, this is an area that members may wish to consider. It's also worth pointing out that actually the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, when considering this matter, very much supported that this should be a matter of urgency to support broadband, but they also noted that this was an area that was on their work programme to look at. The fourth area very much here is about payment to town and parish councils. The Secretary of State, when he announced we had the money from the £1.4 million of money, announced that actually there might be a need to pay some of this to town and parish councils. As yet, no council has approached us for funding. However, we're aware that there may be one or two that do. Again, this was considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and they were very much suggesting that actually, rather than saying we should automatically suggest that the town and parish councils use their reserves first, they were suggesting we should be relying or taking each case on its merits. So rather than having a policy, we should wait and see if any town or parish council does approach this council and then make a decision based on the facts in that case. The next section just want to mention is about the impact on the capital budget. So this is very much where we've looked at each of the schemes in the capital programme, and as yet we're not proposing to make any changes to the capital programme. So very much we are making sure that we are continuing to deliver the capital programme as was agreed in February. Chair, do you want me to pause there for any comments or questions? Because that's very much about the impact on the current year budget. And the next bit is about the future year on the medium-term financial strategy.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Does anyone have any questions for Rodney at this point in time? So I can see Lana's got her hand up. So Lana, do you want to start?
Yes, Chairman, I've just been advised by the monitoring officer on the chat message that I should have declared an interest as a director of Broadland Growth Limited because that's an item on this review. So thank you, James. If you could record that for me, please. But that's it. Thank you.
I guess you need to do the same for me then, James.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether, I mean, obviously we've got Karen on the line as well. I mean, she's not participating, but she, you may need to record it for her as well. I don't know.
Yes, please, James, if we can record that for Karen as well. Thank you.
So well spotted, Emma. So over to you, Joe. You got your hand up as well.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Sean. I just want to update you on broadband. We had a quick meeting before the cabinet meeting tonight, and Sean has asked me to discuss the matter of broadband at the Economic Success Panel, which will be on the 22nd of July. And I'll try and invite Karen O'Kane along as she leads for County Council on better broadband for Norfolk. And I just wondered whether Phil Cotier could update us on the Bure Valley Railway, please. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, Joe. Yeah, I think that's a good idea to see if we can get Karen O'Kane to the Economic Success Panel. At least that will then know where we are with better broadband, and that also then we can then start to plan out from there as to what we can or can't do from that point in time without duplicating work that's going on within her team. Phil, do you look like you want to come in?
No, sorry, Chair. I cut across you very rudely, and it was really only a response to Councillor Copplestone's question or comment with regard to the Bure Valley Railway. Yeah, in terms of an update, I think there was a question as to providing more information from the Bure Valley Railway as to justifying their request for waiving the rent. I have had an exchange of emails. I've had a lengthy justification, which I've shared with Rodney and Joe and yourself, which provides the reasoning and the justification for their current position. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I'm happy to pick up any questions. It is saying that they are in dire straits, that they are in a position where they are considering even their future, and that the waiving of rent for them will have a significant benefit to them. As I say, I'm not going to go through it in detail unless anyone wants me to pick up any particular points that they may have concerns about.
Okay, thank you for that, Phil. I guess the one question I had, and I couldn't see it in that exchange that you'd had with him, there was no firm commitment to a reopening. Is that because the whole thing we asked for was about a reopening plan?
Yeah, clearly at the moment, I'm just trying to, just bear with me while I try and dig out anything else that I have. In terms of a reopening plan, they are clearly bound at the moment by government restrictions. They are hoping that they can open on the 4th of July, but it's not clear yet. They are having to sort of have a reconsideration, because they'll come at a certain point in the season where they say, actually, it is not beneficial to open, because the expenditure that they'll still have, they'll never be able to recoup it in a shortened season. They are having as a final cut-off point of making that decision the 1st of August, and they'll need to establish at that point, on the 1st of August, if they have not been already been able to open, whether they can viably reopen that year. And if they don't, that would mean that they would probably have to make staff redundant, with the possible exception of a couple of engineers who would then maintain the equipment. And at that point, they're also looking at whether they would need to move their equipment from the site. So, yeah, they haven't got a specific timetable for reopening, because they're not in a position where they can do that because of the government restrictions at the moment. But as described, there are those dates when they are hoping to open on the 4th, but if they're unable to open by the 1st of August, they're going to have to make a decision as to whether they open at all. Okay,
thank you for that. My other question for you relating to that is then in relation to the work we've commissioned the Bure Valley Railway to undertake for us in the repairs that we've asked them to do for the fencing. Is that something that they're now looking to do, or are they, because I assume they don't need to open to the public to enable them to do that?
No, so it would still be work that effectively we are carrying out, but it was in conjunction with them, and it was using, because of the restrictions in terms of getting access on a railway, it was easier to use, for example, the trains to ferry the equipment to and from, the materials to and from. We were going to use the contractor that they use, because again, he is licensed to operate on a railway in that way. So it wasn't that we were then just handing the money over to them to do the work. We were effectively commissioning the work and using those funds, but working in conjunction with them.
But they would see a benefit from those funds as such. That would be an income to them. Admittedly, there would be cost, would there?
No, so it wouldn't present an income. They would see benefit, but it's a benefit that we are obliged to do because it is our asset that we need to maintain.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, thank you for that. I've got Lana followed by Joe. So Lana, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Chairman. Phil, could you I'm slightly puzzled why they are not with the rest of the hospitality business, even though the date is not definite. Why are they not gearing up towards the 4th of July? Because I know that part of their business is linking in with the passenger boats from Wroxham. You know, there's all sorts of opportunities out there. And I just think that, you know, most other hospitality businesses are just going, well, that's the date we're working towards, and just staying positive with it. Do they need some practical support in terms of getting what they need going on the ground for them to perhaps, what's the word, you know, build the optimism into opening for the season rather than thinking it's not going to happen? Do they need some optimism from you, Phil? And us, you know.
Yeah, no. To be fair, and my apologies, I don't think what they are saying is they are gearing up to open as soon as they can. But they also have to reflect on the fact that they are not like a pub where you have different options. You may have a garden. They are a business where they are inviting people into fairly tight and confined spaces. So there are additional costs associated with that, and they are not going to get the same level of return as they would do normally. And for example, just simply by requiring a greater number of staff hours they're going to need more staff available to help them through this period. And so they're probably going to have to be reducing their operations from, instead of 7 days a week, down to 5 days a week. So I don't think it's a case of them feeling negative and not being able to start on the 4th of July. They absolutely want to start on the 4th of July, but they are saying there are inherent costs. Whether we start on the 4th of July, whether we start on the 1st of August, whatever it is, there are going to be more costs and we're going to see a reduced income.
Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Joe, followed by Trudy, followed by Steve. So Joe.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much, Phil, for just updating us on the Bure Valley Railway. I think we need to go back to the fact this is a tenant-landlord relationship. And the Bure Valley Railway has been there now for 30 years, and there is a huge amount of social benefit that they provide with their volunteer scheme, and there is a huge impact on local businesses as well, and the added value that the railway brings. In light of what you've said, Phil, I just wondered whether Cabinet would reconsider 5.16, which says deferring rental payments until July, in light of the fact that they might only just start going in July, and it's looking probably as if the railway possibly won't start up till August, or maybe not at all. Could we just change that from July to August or September? I don't know what everyone else thinks on that. Thank you.
Okay, Trudy.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say, yes, I've read some of the email exchanges as well. And I was a bit surprised to see where they were even considering not opening for the Santa train. So the fact that they're looking that far ahead at not opening, I really, really feel that we have to see their reopening plan and help them with the reopening, rather than if we make a decision for funding and then they still close and move elsewhere as they're considering, that is not the best use of Broadland District Council funds, as I see it. So I do still believe that the core of this is the reopening plan, which I'm sure we're all delighted to help with that, because we all want it up and running again. And then once we've got that plan, then we can maybe look at other ways that we could potentially help them. But at the moment, I just don't think we've got enough information personally.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. And just picking up on Joe's point around 5.5, we just need to consider when we get to the end of this around the whether there is any value for them in deferring just until August or September and giving perhaps Phil and his team that scope to do that if necessary. Over to you, Steve. You wanted to come in.
Thank you, Sean. It's very much in line with actually the point that you raised, Sean, and Trudy's actually just covered as well. Obviously, not seeing the correspondence and that wasn't there at the ONS meeting as well. I mean, really, an opening plan is like a business plan, isn't it? It's about setting out your facts and your figures in a proper business plan for reopening, and again, very much in line with what Trudy is saying as well. Clearly, you know, there needs to be a clear sort of fact and figure business plan, and the point's been made by Trudy adequately around the centre issue, which I obviously wasn't party in terms of seeing, but I think that's absolutely correct. Just putting a sort of overview and scrutiny head on this with this information, that clearly you need a robust plan that we help with, Phil, etc., to understand and make sure that, you know, it's the best use of Broadland's resources, because if it's just put in and that's not clearly there and they close, then I think we would have scrutiny coming back on us as a council, maybe, that perhaps we didn't robustly understand that in the first place. So I think from an overview and scrutiny point of view, completely support what Sean said on this and Trudy, and for those reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I guess we just need to pick this up when we get to the recommendations at the end. So I don't see any other questions at this point, other than I do note that I've referenced the wrong part of the report. It's not 515, it's 516. So thank you for that, Joe. Okay, so back to you, Rodney.
Right, thank you very much. So very much the first bit is very much about the in-year impacts, the impacts on 2021. Section 7 is then saying, well, actually, not only we do need to consider the immediate impacts, but we need to consider longer term impacts. So this is where we've done a piece of work to update our medium term financial strategy. And the key document, or the key paragraph I'd like to draw your attention to, is paragraph 7.7. And this very much shows how we've gone from the original funding gap, which we identified in February when we agreed the budgets, to the new funding gap we're now identifying as of now. So as you'll be able to see, in the current year, in 2021, with all the changes, we'll actually believe that we'll have £62,000 extra left from the government grant at this stage. So we're suggesting that that needs to be kept back as a small surplus for a contingency for additional spending pressures. As I'm sure as the COVID pandemic continues, there'll be additional pressures. But very much for the in-year position, the council is still having a balanced budget if we agree all the information in this report. Looking further ahead, we think that the financial position will be slightly worse than we originally anticipated in sort of February time, and that's very much because of two things. One, we think there's going to be pressure on the recycling gate fee, and the second, we think there could actually be the funding we get from assumed business rates growth could be slightly worse than we assumed in February. So very much the message for me is the current year we are still in balance, but looking forward, we still need to be looking at taking action to address the longer term financial deficit. Section 8 of the report very much just provides information on what mitigation actions we've been taking across the council in response to COVID-19. And I'd just like to highlight paragraph 8.3, just a very much a benefit from the one team approach. Because we've been working jointly with South Norfolk, we've been able to deploy resources appropriately across the two councils to make sure we could respond as and when we needed it. I'd also just like to move on to section 9. Obviously within this sort of a year, we could potentially look at making some savings to compensate some of the additional spending pressures. So officers have been looking at the vacancies. So as at the end of April, there were 65 vacancies across the two councils. And just by the fact that we haven't been recruiting for these posts for the past 3 months, that is generating a revenue saving in our budgets of about £148,000. There'll be some budgets, so some posts that we won't recruit for another few months, and there are a couple of posts we're suggesting will be deleted as well. So we're suggesting that we could actually reduce our budgets, our salary budgets, by £242,000 as a result of these vacancies at the start of the year. And this saving will obviously help compensate for some of the additional spending pressures mentioned above. The other area where we think there will be a slight saving this year is within training budgets. We're not suggesting we're going to be reducing the level of support to make sure that officers and members are provided with adequate training. It's just the fact that for the first 3 months of the year, it's been difficult for staff to attend training, and therefore on a pro rata reduction, we think there'll be a small saving within that budget. The other thing I just need to mention before concluding is very much these figures in this report are very much our best estimates. So it is still early in the year, so we've done our best to make sure our estimates are robust as possible. But there are risks that actually there could be a second wave of infections, which might require further lockdown, which could incur additional costs. And it's also worth pointing out that at the moment we have received some funding from government. There is talk that there may be additional funding coming later on, but as yet that is uncertain. And that very much takes us to the recommendations which are set out in paragraph 11. And I shall pass it back for questions.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Any questions before I hand over to Trudy? No? Okay, Trudy, over to you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Rodney. You cover all the points, which means I have to speak less, which is always a good thing. But I'll just summarise a few things here. As you've said, really, a lot of this are guesstimates, the income reductions, the additional costs that we might incur. It's obviously prudent to put these in. Putting additional money aside for emergency responses, whether it's Hardship Fund, housing benefit, whatever it is, emergency response to COVID is an important thing. We need to be able to react as quickly as possible to changing circumstances. So I definitely support that we put money aside for these purposes. With regards to the market towns, I look forward to these being rolled out urgent, the money that's gone to the market towns to help them getting up and running. I'm looking forward to that getting rolled out across the whole of the council. I think all of us in any small way, any of our parishes will appreciate some help there and get some confidence back in the high streets. The Broadland growth, again, it's good to see that we're still able to fund the projects we want to fund. It's important for Broadland to be seen to help stimulate the economy at this difficult time, and we want to carry on and lead the way doing that. With regards to the Bure Valley Railway, obviously I've already made my feelings clear on how I feel about that. And moving on to the broadband, just another update, as well as obviously we'll see Karen now at Economic Development, just to say some more funding has come forward from government to the LEPs to deliver infrastructure projects, and they've got to be projects that can be delivered within 18 months. And broadband is one of the things that has been put on that list as on a wish list from us. So that's another approach, as well as making a bid to the SIL Infrastructure Fund. There's another route there to try and get some funding for broadband. Moving on to the towns and parishes, as Rodney said, no councils have approached us as yet. And I think the thing worth noting here is they have control of their precept much more than we do at district level. At the end of the day, we're both serving the same residents, but the ability for the town and parish councils to recoup any funding is a lot wider than we have available at district level. So I'm personally quite happy that we would help with their cash flow if necessary, until they are, as it says, able to increase their own precepts. And then moving on, again, as Rodney said, this year the additional government funding has resulted in us not being disadvantaged this year. Moving forward, as noted, we are around about £500,000 worse off each year. We of course have no idea about our funding, and this inevitably will change. But this is, as I see it, probably the worst case scenario at the moment, hopefully. But we don't know about new homes bonus, and that we still haven't included it. So we have, I think, been very prudent in seeing that we could potentially be £1.5 million every year on going into our reserves. I think it's been each director or assistant director have looked obviously at the posts in their departments, and if they feel that they are capable of making savings through vacancies, then I think we can trust them to be able to do that. And again, with the training budgets, quite rightly, yes, we can't, training sessions can't really be attended other than virtually. So it probably is quite prudent, again, to cut that budget down. So that moves on, after summarising, it moves on to recommendations. And I would like to propose all of the recommendations in 11.1 and 11.2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Trudy. And I think in addition to that, you were then picking up the one from ONS that you talked about around the Bure Valley Railway, wasn't it? Around the economic recovery team to work with them to deliver a reopening plan.
We have got that in there anyway. I think it's already in our recommendations on page. Yeah, so it's members are requested. Hang on a minute. Get the page again. Can't find the again now. Just a moment.
You're okay.
Yeah,
and the other part we needed to continue on that was also the whether we extend the deferral of the rent perhaps to September, to give Phil and his team the scope there to look a bit further in that.
Yeah, it's the recommendation is already there on 5.19. It's up to other cabinet members as well to discuss whether they want to extend, but I personally think 5.19 is okay, but it's up to others if they want to amend the date.
Okay, so any questions for Trudy or any other bits anyone wants to ask? I saw Steve, you had your finger up.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it's
followed
just,
by Joe.
It's just in relation to the sorry, to recommendations, and before moving to the vote, obviously I'd just like to amplify the recommendations from ONS. So if I just go through that, Sean, under 3, which is those 3 bullet points, which I can amplify. I don't know if everybody can actually see them there. So if I just amplify them and just speak to those, Sean, for consideration. So we've got 3 under the recommend. We've got the 1 and 2, which was 11.1, 11.2, and then we've got 3. The cabinet agrees that, and this is the first bullet point. Prior to considering any request for funding, it's recommended that the economic recovery team look to assist Bure Valley Railway to develop reopening plan. And it should be ensured that any other leisure and tourism offerings should be given economic recovery team is very much actually in the same thought processes as has been gone through by the points you've also raised, Sean and Trudy as well, that clearly we need to make sure that the economic recovery team is doing a robust job with the Bure Valley on that, and really looking for a business plan in terms of the rent and to ensure this actually will mean reopening. The second point in that as well, and it's really in 2 points, is that albeit that the proposition within the cabinet recommendations, the construct for that is looking at rent. The point that was made at ONS is that there are a number of other probably leisure and tourism businesses that may need some kind of assistance through our team in terms of an opening plan to ensure that you know, they can open. So the rental issue may not be there in terms of, you know, other tourist agencies or businesses that are paying rent. They're not, but certainly in terms of business plans, they may need assistance in terms of an opening plan, which we clearly want to make sure these businesses open again. So it's really around that point that we pick up on that to ensure that you know, some equal opportunities going on around perhaps some assistance. It could be technical or possibly financial if that can be found. And that was really the second point in that bullet point. In relation to the next bullet point, the council should make a bid to the Civil Infrastructure Fund. I've heard the further on that in terms of the also the points that have been made around some further funding at the ONS. I mean, I know trying to run my own business off of broadband at home, I'm having some real difficulties with it at the moment via Zoom. And of course, there's also kids off school as well around broadband. It was felt that really that would be a good resource, notwithstanding the points that have already been made by cabinet members, of course. That would be a good resource, and to treat it as a matter of urgency in terms of that resource. And then the last bullet point, that the council consider any funding requests from town and parish councils on a case-by-case basis, looking at all options with the same criteria that apply to business grants. I think really what ONS is saying there, yes, we understand that some parish town councils have quite large reserves. They're not all the same. And there is means for them to try to raise grants, etc. But what the thought process there was, if we've got an open kind of book, that if we do get an application somehow from a parish town council, we should keep an open mind to their circumstance and judge it on a case-by-case basis, because we don't know. There could be something coming back through in terms of something that they're doing that could be an issue. So it's trying not to absolutely close the door on that. And it's just trying to keep a flexible approach on a case-by-case basis, not binding the council to any position whatsoever. So those were the sort of variants on the recommendations, Chair. Thank you, Sean.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Joe, you wanted to come in? No, we've lost you, Joe.
Sorry about that. Yes, so just to come back on Steve's points, yes, I'm happy to have Karen O'Kane at the Economic Success Panel on the 22nd of July. You're all welcome to come along. Obviously, getting broadband to people is part of our inclusive growth plans to make sure that nobody is disadvantaged in the district. And in the recent government white paper, it said fairness to all. So I think we need to think about that, but we also need to think about our staff capacity and the timeliness of getting this done. So I can't see this as being a short-term solution, because this will take some work, Steve. And as soon as the economic development team have finished sort of helping businesses, I'm sure that will be one of their top projects to look at and to see if we can secure funding from either the Community Infrastructure Fund or the New Anglia LEP. Going back to the Bure Valley Railway, I just want to assure everyone that our economic development team are happy to support the Bure Valley Railway with any bespoke plans they need for reopening, and indeed any leisure, hospitality or tourism business with bespoke plans. I think the problem with forming a business plan at this stage is the government announces their plans at the moment. We think it's going to be the 4th of July. That may get pushed back. Some of the senior officers, I was talking to them yesterday when I was out with the others on the confidence campaign in Aylsham. They were saying, we don't know the government plans before they're announced to the public, and that is causing some difficulty. So I would like to go back to 5.16 and just think about the tenant-landlord relationship. The Bure Valley Railway, they hope to open in July. It might not be till August. In light of that, I think we ought to just consider the effect on their cash flow, possibly not being able to open for 4 or 5 months of the year, and maybe just defer that rent payment to September, if everyone is happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Joe. I guess I come back to you, Trudy, as it's your recommendation. Are you comfortable to put September in there as far as up to September as a deferment date?
I would, yeah, up to. I wouldn't want to go longer than that without a business case, and
No.
it's I really wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just wanted to make one more point regarding Steve's comments about the towns and parishes. We have put in there that we would offer loans to help with cash flow until the precept can be increased. I think what you need to bear in mind here is that you would have all towns and parishes paying for the odd parish council if we were to start issuing grants. I think that is the point here. And that's so you would have like the majority of residents paying for a small portion of residents. And I don't necessarily think that's the right way. I think offering an inexpensive loan to help with cash flow is definitely the better way forward. With regards to the Bure Valley then, so the recommendations in 11.1 and 11.2, well, does that cover the Bure Valley Railway then, or do we have to do a separate vote on that?
I think we need to just put an additional one in there just to pick up that recommendation that was in the paper. I think it was 519. And also
because
just
there's various recommendations through the paper that I'm assuming are covered in 11.1 and 11.2. But if not, obviously we'll do them separately.
Yeah, I don't think it's there. So I think we probably just need to add that one in and pick up Steve's comment about that came from ONS about other tourist offerings as well. So that opens it up to other people to put forward their things. The key thing with the Bure Valley Railway is as you've said, I think that we need that plan. We understand that they don't know, there's that uncertainty about when they can open, but they need to be building a plan for when that happens. And if they don't do that, then they're never going to be ready on time. So I would say we just need to add that in, if that's okay, Trudy. Trudy looks like she's frozen. We're having a few internet glitches tonight. We need more broadband, that's what it is. Does that cover it, Emma, from your point of view? Have we been clear enough around what we're putting forward?
I think, Chairman, I think it would be beneficial to add in specifically what you're saying with regards to Bure Valley Railway and the support that you will give them. And I think what it's worthwhile doing with this is because the recommendations that will go on to council, obviously we've got quite a few that flow through the report, and Rodney summarised at the end in sections 11.1 and 11.2. When we then take it through to council, we can then make sure that those are pulled out with those specific references. But I think in 11.1 you do need to add in what you're referring to in terms of BVR.
Okay, thank you for that. Trudy's now back. I don't know if Trudy, have you heard any of that?
Just the BVR needs to be added, yeah?
Yeah, but basically, yes, I think that's probably the only one that's,
Yeah.
that's outstanding on the
Okay.
list. I think what Emma's just asking us to do is just go back through the report and just make sure we've picked up the different elements and then come
'cause
back
there's-
to the
That's the
recommendations.
thing. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Because
That's
if
fine.
not, we're going to have that confusion when we come
Because we
to
might have
full
missed some. Yeah,
council.
there's so many
Yeah.
on the way through that I assume they're all covered off.
So do you want to take us through those then, Trudy? And
yeah,
I'll
then-
second those as we go through, so we're in the
Okay.
right place with that.
The first one, I believe, is 2.5. Members are requested to agree the proposed changes on page 26.
Okay, sorry, I'm doing the fingy walky thing to get my iPad back to there. Okay, so yep, so that's the first one on page 26. So Trudy's proposed that one as it is, and I'll second that. So that one falls through, doesn't it? Yep.
And then 3.3 on page 27 to the changes to the expenditure budgets.
Yep.
Then 3.8 on page 28.
Okay, yeah, so that's the one about the public realm and the investment there, yes.
And then 3.11 on 28, the proposed changes to the expenditure budgets is there again.
Yep, that's quite clear, so yes.
Yep. And 4.5 on 29, the impact on Broadland growth.
Yep, so that one I think was on the list, but yes, go with that one.
5.1 on page 30, the additional £100,000 to be set aside.
Yeah, it's 5.10, I think it.
Yeah, 5.10,
yep.
sorry.
Yep. Then 519.
Yeah, there is a little bit in 5.14. It just says a further request for funding will be made at a later date, but I don't think that's an actual, that's not a note or anything really. Yeah, 5.19. So Bure Valley Railway still will extend to, it's the beginning of September, is it? Or the end?
Does anyone know when their rent is due? Is it due at the beginning or the end of the month?
Chairman, might I assist?
Yeah, please, Trevor.
Chairman, I wonder if you split that into two recommendations following the flow of the conversation. And the first might read, subject to your agreement, Cabinet agreed to defer payment of rent due from BVR until the end of September 2020. Would be the first one. And the second, that Cabinet asked staff to support BVR in developing a reopening plan prior to any further consideration by the Cabinet.
Yes, that's right. That sounds right. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So Trudy's happy with that. So I'll second that one. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
And then 5.24 on page 31 regarding broadband.
Yeah, and I think we've probably superseded this one by the recommendation coming out of the Economic Success Panel, haven't we?
Yeah.
That's actually where the actions are proceeding. Yeah. So I'd say that one's covered there. Would that be okay, Emma?
Oh, sorry, Sean. Yeah, you accepted those minutes earlier. So if you're happy, then that supersedes that one, and James can record that.
Yep. Thank you.
5.28 on page 31.
Yeah, so again, that's the approach to the parish councils. That picks up the ability for them to come to us should they have a need, and obviously we can then consider what we want to do at that point in time.
Correct. 7.9 on page 34 to note the budget.
Yep.
There's a lot of these, aren't there?
There are, aren't they?
And 9.8. Page 36. It's just the impact on Broadland budgets.
That's the underspend on the training budget, isn't it? So just reducing the training budget.
Oh, and 9.4 on the same page as well.
Yep.
Yep.
The savings on the staff posts that haven't been filled yet. Yep.
And that takes us back to the 11.1 and the 11.2.
Okay, so thank you, Trudy, for running through those again. So you now have all of the recommendations from Trudy with the amendments kindly supplied by Trevor, and I'll second all of those. So we now need to go to a roll call to vote. So over to you, James.
Okay. Councillor Copplestone, can you confirm that you support the proposals?
Yes, I support the proposals. Thank you.
Councillor Emsall.
For.
Councillor Hempsall.
For.
Councillor Leggett.
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
For.
Councillor Vincent.
For.
And Councillor Wymark.
For.
Right, that's carried.
Thank you for that, James. Thank you, everyone, for your perseverance in getting all of those bits right. I'm sure that will pay dividends later on when we have to take that through full council. So hopefully we've covered all of the bases on what we need to have done there. Okay, so then moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 10, the insurance procurement, which is that. It must be Debbie, isn't it?
It is, Chair. Thank
So
you.
I assume you're presenting this?
Yes, please.
Over to you.
Thank you. Members will be be aware that back in March we bought a paper, and members then agreed that we would seek an insurance contract through the local government mutual. Unfortunately, others that were interested in joining the mutual at the last moment pulled out, and that left solely Broadland Council, which means that we were unable to form that mutual because it needs at least two to become one of those. Since that date, we've been looking as officers at options, and are proposing here two things. One is that we align contract renewal dates with South Norfolk, and that is for two reasons. One, because it moves the bulk of the work around repurchasing insurance to October and takes it out of clashing with the year-end work, which is already a busy period. But two, going forward, if we align dates, that gives us greater opportunities in future, including potentially looking at the mutual offer again in future. We've worked with Zurich, who are our current insurers, and they have agreed to move to that date with a 16th month contract. And we have already signed with them a 4-month extension, which would take us from the 1st of June this year to the 30th of September 2020. And I'm pleased to tell you that they've agreed that extension at the same rate pro rata as last year's payment, which makes us a small saving in terms of any inflationary increase they would normally apply. And then they are offering a subsequent 1-year contract from the 1st of October to the 30th of September 2021. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Debbie. I assume they haven't asked us to remove all our vending machines.
No, not yet. No.
Okay, over to you, Trudy.
Yeah, just to say, I think this makes perfect sense. Broadland we're a founding member working with the LGA, and I've personally put a lot of work and effort into this, and I really hope that eventually it will be, the option will be available, and it would be then prudent for us to join. So I'm very happy to put forward the recommendation on page 42, item number 10.1. But could we just change the date to the 30th of September, because there's no such thing as the 31st.
Okay, thank you, Trudy. Yeah, you found the one that ONS missed. Well done.
On page 42.
So, yep, I will second that. So we have a question from Lana. Lana, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Chairman, I just wanted to well, I was going to second, hopefully, but you jumped in there. But I just wanted to thank Trudy and the officers for, coming up with such a fantastic, flexible solution for us, because it just couldn't be better, sort of dovetailing the way it does. So congratulations for what you've done. So that's all.
On mute, sorry. So thank you for that, Lana. We just now need to progress to the vote. So over to you, James.
Councillor Copplestone, can you confirm you support the proposal?
4, thank you.
Councillor Emsell? Councillor Emsell? Councillor Hempsell?
4.
Councillor Leggett?
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle?
4.
Councillor Vincent?
4.
And Councillor Wymark?
4.
Thank you, that's carried.
Thank you for that, James. So that then moves us on to item 11, which is on page 43, the Armed Forces Covenant. And I see Victoria is there. So I take it, Victoria, you are presenting this one?
Correct, Chairman. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So the report before you summarises progress made by the Council through the Defence Employer Recognition Scheme. So this is a scheme that rewards organisations that demonstrate or advocate support to the armed forces community and defence people. So Broadland and South Norfolk councils were awarded bronze status in December last year, and we submitted our nominations for silver in May. And we should hear by early August if we've been successful. However, we have a clear ambition to achieve gold status. Most of the actions to achieve silver and indeed gold can be accommodated within existing operational work and budgets. However, if we wish to make a realistic application for gold status next year, there is one area that requires Cabinet approval, and that's the implementation of a policy to offer an additional 10 days paid leave for reservists. So reservists commit to undertake a minimum number of training days per year, including a 10-day period of training or exercise. They can currently use unpaid leave to meet this commitment, or they can also use their annual leave entitlement. But for us to achieve gold, we would need to offer reservists this paid leave in addition to their current entitlement. So as an illustration, in adopting this policy, the increase in the salary budget would vary from around £650 per year for someone employed at salary band A to just over £2,000 per year for someone employed at salary band J. So as a high level estimate, we currently have 2 reservists working in the one team. If both were employed at the top end of salary band J, it would cost the councils just over £4,200 per year. While there is a budget commitment to implementing this policy, it gives an opportunity for us to send a clear message to current but also prospective reservist colleagues of the value we place on having their skills and experience working with the councils. It also enables us to meet the criteria set by the ERS for gold status, thus recognising the council's commitment nationally to supporting our armed forces community. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, Victoria. As I said, the recommendations are on page 47, 8.11, 8.12. Just like to add a further element to that around the reporting back. It would be useful if there could either be an annual report, or this could be incorporated in somehow into the business plan reporting so that we get visibility of how this is supporting and helping our staff. I don't know if that's something that we can pick up, Hannah?
Potentially, absolutely. We can look at including that within the performance reporting. Okay,
brilliant. So if you can just add those sort of words on the end of, I guess that ought to be an 8.3 on the recommendation there for me, please, James. Is there any questions? I've got some hands up. So Mike Pursehouse, do you want to go first? Followed by Fran and then followed by Trudy.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that when this went to overview and scrutiny, one of the points raised was about, but there is no, there's no endless check. At the moment, there's only two members of reservists who are out there in the council who would be potentially paid. But if we obviously recognise what ONS said in terms of if there was a sudden deluge of staff who wanted to be a reservist, all the evidence suggests that isn't the case, because it's a massive commitment to be a reservist. But if there was, then this is a policy that we would relook at again. So, you know, we wouldn't just keep going on. We would cap it at some point.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Yeah, and I guess that's where we picked up the element from ONS and asked for it to be picked up as an annual report or as part of the business plan reporting, so that it gives us a measure that we can then review at that point in time. Okay, so Fran.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just a quick question, really. I just wondered the cost in salary. Is there any offset? Any monies back from the MOD?
We did look into this, so there can be costs that come back for certain things, such as if a reservist is mobilised, but not for the not for the 10 days training. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for answering that, Trudy.
Yeah, just a real quickie. If the two, I know we're like one team now, but if the two reservists, say they were both originally from Broadland or both originally from South Norfolk, both councils will be awarded the gold, will they? If we're just split the cost of the salaries, is that how that would work?
I would guess so, because it's the policy of the council, not what they pay. I'll leave it for others to answer that question. I think the other element around who pays what, it would, because it's the one team, would then follow the normal split. But I don't know if Debbie or Rodney can answer that for us.
Yeah, it is about the policy, not necessarily how many people you have that come under that policy. And yes, their costs would normally be split if they're in a service that we collaborate on. Obviously, if they're in leisure at the moment, that would stay with leisure at South Norfolk Council. And if it's in the South Norfolk Waste, that would stay with them. But if it's any other service, then yes, those costs would be split.
Okay, thank you for confirming that, Debbie. I've got Steve followed by Trevor. So Steve.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, the ONS were really supportive of this, and I've had quite a bit of experience around this as well. I negotiated a key negotiation with what was the world's second largest manufacturer, which covering 30,000 workers here in the UK. Took 6 months to do, where we brought in the paid leave aspect. There was a consequence to that. As you can imagine, 30,000 people, there was actually a fair number. And then there was an absence issue as well, absentee cover as well. But what was negotiated at that point in time was always, you know, we need to have a look at the impact on the business moving forward. And really, that's the point really that ONS is making it. And when you go back to the gold award standard, the minimum in there is 5 days to achieve it, so it doesn't have to be 10. We fully support ONS the 10-day provision, but again on the amendment which it says here for cabinet, where it's got 10 days, point 2, there's then this add which could be subject to review if necessary, because also one of the things that we did in the past as well, I was responsible for and signed off on, was that that should be part terms and conditions as well. Now at ONS, there wasn't any reference back from an officer in terms of terms and conditions of employment. That wasn't mentioned at that point in time. So in relation to this, you can actually vary this and maintain that gold standard. You can have 5, 6, 7 days. Of course, you never know in life. I'm aware of another company where all of a sudden we had an influx of people for no rhyme nor reason. So it's really just about doing the best thing we can for our armed services, these people, but having obviously a position there around, you know, a review or, you know, is subject to review. And therefore we're being open and transparent about that in terms of perhaps an impact in the future, impacting the councils. And I think, Sean, that really you're sort of indicating, you made a little note there, a little comment in terms of the ONS position around that. And really that's just the background to why we came to that recommendation, as Mike said as well. And you know, and obviously fully support it, but, you know, just need to council just to have a, you know, it's subject to review, and that service personnel, reservists are, you know, are aware of that as well, you know. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, thank you for that, Steve. Trevor, do you want to come in there?
Chairman, thank you. I was only going to confirm the points that Debbie got there first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Trevor. Okay, so I've proposed those items. Can I have a seconder, please? Okay, I see Jan's up from Joe, so thank you for that, Joe. James, I think that's over to you for a vote.
Sorry. Mrs. Copplestone, can you confirm if you support the proposal, please?
4, thank you.
Yes. Mr. Emsall?
4.
Mrs. Hempsall?
4.
Mrs. Leggett?
4.
Mrs. Mancini-Boyle?
4.
Mr. Vincent?
4.
And Mr. Wymark?
4.
That's carried.
Thank you for that, James.
As amended.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking us through that, Victoria. So hopefully that gives you what you need to take that forward as far as putting in the bids, and hopefully we'll get our silver and gold status as we move forward. So thank you for that. That moves us on then to item 12 on page 48, which is a temporary change to the housing allocation policies. And I see Richard. Well, I can't see Richard, but I can see Richard's name. Are you there, Richard?
I am indeed. Emily, I'm trying to restart the video. Oh, lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Chair. So when I started talking about the report within ONS, I want to take the opportunity to talk about some of the data, which is some of the demand directly on Broadland District Council residents. We've really been able to meet the extra demand on our temporary accommodation service through the one-team model. However, it's incredibly important that I do split up the data. So I've got a bit of a presentation. I'm really hoping this is going to work when I share it. So just bear with me.
Yeah, no pressure. Yeah, that's working for you.
Can everyone see that? Okay, I can't get rid of that. Okay, so the first slide shows the dramatic increase in presentations that we had very, very early on in the lockdown. I'll touch on a bit of a report because it's very difficult not to. Within the report, I detailed we were very, very fortunate and a fortuitous situation that we had very, very few rough sleepers due to our rough sleeper initiative. However, that did not make us immune from the extra demand. We have a lot of people who are sofa surfing within Broadland District Council. That means that they can stay at a friend's house for a few days or stay at a family member's house for a few days. However, the very temporary housing in which they had on offer very, very quickly dried up because of lockdown. You can't go from one house to another house on a weekly or monthly period. So we had a very, very quick influx of people. And as you can see in March, that went very high up to 12. That's steadily stayed there in April. And then in May, we're starting to see it starting to move back to original levels. I'm not anticipating that's going to go back down to where it was, because now we're starting to see family breakdowns starting to come through the process as families find it more and more difficult to be within the lockdown arena. Okay, so we've had to take a pretty strategic approach towards where we place people who need a temporary accommodation service. As you all know, we took on Coltishall as a lease. We currently have 11 people accommodated there, but has been able to give more secure, more sensible and better accommodation to people. However, that we have had to still utilise B&B accommodation. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. One, we haven't had the vacancies within Coltishall, our own leased properties, to place people, but equally, Coltishall and our own leased properties weren't suitable for more high risk people. The advantage of B&Bs is there's always someone on site. There's normally CCTV there, so it's a better place to place people who with higher needs. Okay. So the total TA numbers look like this. Reason why I've included this is from the first graph you could surmise how much our TA numbers have gone up. Our temporary accommodations numbers has gone up. But what you can see at the bottom, the orange line is the one where it excites me, if that's the right word to use, because I'm starting to see the housing sector start again. The reason why our TA numbers went up wasn't just demand, it was a complete removal of any supply. We normally see nearly 100 properties coming available during this period, and we've had about 3 or 4 so far. But at least we're starting to see them come through. What we've done is work very, very closely with our landlords to nominate people directly into those properties when they're suitable for a normal traditional accommodation. But unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time. And as you can see towards the end, we nominated them halfway through April. It's going to take until June for them to do the assessments and for them to move into those properties. Okay, but with that, then I hope to see the total TA numbers go down, providing we don't see a larger demand due to family breakdowns. Okay, I've then split it into required outcomes. So the first thing, when we're working with people, the main thing is to find out where they need to go, because temporary accommodation is not a suitable place for people to stay in any way, shape or form for any long-term period of time. As you can see, there's quite a wide split. There's a large majority of people, and just to note, just to add, Chair, sorry, this is in percentage numbers rather than actual numbers, so please don't panic. It just shows a little bit of a spread of the kind of people we're seeing within our TA. A large majority do just require unsupported housing. So by working with our landlords, we can make sure that goes through as quickly as possible. People within temporary accommodation are treated as an emergency or a high level need within the allocations policy, so they are covered. However, you'll see the biggest extra demand is then on supported housing. So supported housing is kind of housing of multiple occupation, where a number of people live in a housing providers. It's kind of like a flat and communal area where they've got support there all the time to teach them with the skills that they need, to give them the skills both in training for education, but also training just for basic living skills. Because when you go into unsupported accommodation, you are on your own, and if you're not given those skills, you are more likely to fail and therefore come back into the service. The one on the left, just say return to a previous home. That's someone who's been stuck here, unfortunately due to lockdown, because they haven't been able to fly home. They're not native to Britain, and they've got nowhere else to live during this time. And the government gave us some funding to be able to help people who are in that situation. So they won't just be returning to home; they'll be returning to a long way away. The housing first are for the people who can't even in supported accommodation won't even be able to help them, and we're working very closely with our landlords again, but also from a multi-agency approach, because housing first model is basically you provide someone with a house and then you wrap them around with so much support that you can help them to sustain that tenancy moving forward on their own. Okay. So the real objectives is, sorry, just moving back, supported housing. In our current policy, people coming from supported housing into unsupported housing currently only sit within medium band. What I need to happen is we have a lot of supported accommodation providers out there. I need to free up some space in there. There are people in there who are ready to move on. They've been assessed. We've been working with our supported accommodation providers to find those people. We now need to get them into unsupported housing to open up the availability of that supported housing stock to move people from our TA into that supported housing. This is all about starting the throughput and starting the housing sector up again. So as I've just said, it's about restarting throughput to make supported stock available. And the key thing here is we've got a real opportunity here, because a lot of the people who we now have in TA, they are known to us. Unfortunately, because of sometimes their chaotic nature of their lives, and also because they often have a friend say to them, yeah, don't worry about it, you can come and stay at my house for a few nights. Yeah, they don't stay within our housing service long enough for us to be able to help them. But we now have a real opportunity to get these people within supported housing accommodation, so they can progress from now on to become, I don't want to say, get the best outcomes for them. Okay, there is without a doubt additional cost on the council by housing this number of people within TA. It's not the primary driver, but it has to be something we have to consider, because at the moment the budgets are well above where we would normally be sitting. Our monthly spend, as I say in the report, is looking around at the moment, with the number we've got in there, it's looking around £40,000. I say £35,000 in the report. That is a gross amount. The net amount is more around £21,000 per year, but normally we look to spend circa £45,000 on temporary accommodation as a total as a council throughout the whole year. So whether it's £35,000 or £20,000, it's still significantly higher than we would like to be spending right now. Okay, and the other thing to mention is having additional people within temporary accommodation. We need to manage these people within temporary accommodation. We have a great resource over the team where they can, where we can provide that support to people in temporary accommodation to make sure that they're claiming all the benefits they should be claiming, make sure that they're on the training things, training schedules they should be on. And at the moment, they're finding that very difficult while having to deal with this extra demand. Okay. Within ONS, there was also a couple of concerns raised within the report. Paragraph 5.3, the equality implications. I wanted to, and I detailed it a little bit. Within the report, the argument focused largely more on the savings and the additional cost it is to the council. Oh no, sorry, this is the equality implications, sorry. The equality implications are, the issue is there are a number of people within gold, within high, sorry, who, and the more people you put within that category, the more competition there is on a limited supply of housing. So we could easily put everybody in high, and that wouldn't solve anything, because all it does is mean that everybody is in high and everybody has equal access to that house. But so the policy is there to put people in high, medium and low, depending on what need they have. By putting more people in high, you are putting other people at risk who are in medium. However, I want to make it clear, an example of someone in this situation where they may be put at a disadvantage through this process would be someone who is separated from their partner, living at their friend's or brother's house. They are overcrowded, and therefore they are medium. However, the key thing is they have a roof over their head right now. Whereas the people in our temporary accommodation, they have a roof, but it's a very temporary and not suitable accommodation. Okay. Moving on to the conclusion. Here in the conclusion is where I talked about a bit more about the demand on the team. This is in no way about demand management. There is, of course, an element of demand management within there, because we are looking to move people from temporary accommodation as soon as possible into more suitable accommodation. But this is all about outcomes for me. We have got a real opportunity to get people through the system and get the right outcome for them to be able to help them moving forwards. So, and that will allow us therefore to be able to support other people coming into our service just as well. Okay. So moving on to the report, I'll stop sharing this now if that's okay. Has anyone got any questions with that data before I move on to the report?
Any questions from anybody at this stage? Okay, so is there more to come then, Richard?
Not really, because looking back, I've really covered most of it. But so really it's moving on to the recommendations, which is to agree a temporary amendment to the council's housing policy to allow officers discretion to place eligible and suitable individuals currently living in supported accommodation within the high category for allocations. And subject to recommendation 1, being agreed that this will be in place for an initial period of 3 months, extendable to 6 months with the approval of the Director of People in consultation with the portfolio holder, Fran Weimark.
Okay, thank you for that, Richard. Fran, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Richard. I think it's made clear by Richard the situation that we're in. I mean, we've got a bit of a logjam really due to the COVID situation and the lack of supply of new housing. What we're looking to do is start that logjam, well, start unlocking that logjam really and unblock the housing supply and therefore alleviate the pressure upon the temporary accommodation. The bed and breakfast is obviously where a lot of people in temporary accommodation are now. It's not an ideal situation long term, and additionally it's a significant cost for us. But also as well, as Richard said, we've got a number of people in supported accommodation who no longer need to be there. So by us raising them from medium to high, they can move on to properties which are more appropriate for them. Therefore, opening up spaces for people who are now in temporary accommodation to move in there so they can be supported and hopefully then in the long term move on to unsupported accommodation or light touch support afterwards. So I think it's the right thing to do. I basically put the recommendations to you as put in page 52, 7.1 and 7.2. The only amendment I would make is to 7.2 is the recommendation as it is, but after an update is provided to Cabinet regarding the current position at Broadland District Council. So basically, if we can have an update, Richard, at that point to Cabinet, so we know exactly where we are, and obviously then I can agree that with the Director of People and Communities. So I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Fran. So you're just changing the
so 7.2.
So after 3 months, you would like it to come back to Cabinet
on page 52.
For the report? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So after 3 months, there'd be an update provided to Cabinet, basically regarding the position here.
And I assume also a recommendation on how to proceed at that point in time, whether there'd be need for a further extension or whether we revert back to how we were.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions coming forward from that? So Steve, you got a question?
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, it's just in terms of the recommendation and the point that Richard mentioned, so it's 5.3 and the equalities implication.
Oh yeah.
ONS fully support recommendations, and before ONS fully understand the way we operate. I think, however, the report on the equalities implication, the wording, and we did also have a cross discussion with Emma as well at the ONS meeting, and Richard's alluded to it. The context of it and the semantics of that could be read in an entirely different way, when in actual fact what we're actually doing is supporting the need that is there, the extra costs as also Fran's referred to, and trying to move people through in that purposeful and constructive way. But when you read the equalities implication, it's kind of it's not really demonstrating that, and you can have a different conclusion that's drawn from it when you look at the text. So we just made that reference because equality statements are obviously important,
Thank you for that, Steve. I think actually in hindsight that there's the two other additional changes, isn't there? So paragraph 5.3, as per your slides, you would like to update, and also 6.1. I assume those two are changes that you'd like to make as part of the reports. Is that right, Fran?
Yeah, I mean, is Steve happy with the clarification as Richard's put in the report for 5.3 and 6.1? Were you able to read them through, Steve, on the screen, or do you want Richard to put them back up?
Yeah, I am having problems my end, and I keep on losing audio as well. I don't know if anybody else is having it. So I keep on losing stuff my end. But from what I'm believing is what I'm saying is, Fran, I think that Rich and yourself are confirming that, and
Yeah.
that the text is there for that. So yes, I'd be happy with that. Thanks, Fran.
Okay, thank you.
So there's some new wording on 5.3 and 6.1, and it looks like Emma's going to tell me off for doing it wrong. Emma, over to you.
I'm not going to tell you off, Chairman. I wouldn't dare. All I was going to say is what we'll make sure, because obviously the report's been published and the report is as stands, but what we can make sure in the minutes that James does is clarify those 2 paragraphs within that report that picks up the points that overview and scrutiny made and has been picked up. There was just another point I just wanted to clarify with Fran in terms of your proposal to change the second recommendation. I just wanted to get clarity on that, if that's okay, Chairman. Can I just check what it is we're recommending now? Because at the moment we're saying that it's in place for 3 months, extendable to 3, and that decision is delegated to director and yourself, Fran. Are you saying that actually that's rather than delegating and that comes back into cabinet for that?
It'll come back into cabinet so that we have an update about where we are to look to see whether or not we need to extend it.
Okay, so then that would then become a cabinet decision rather than a delegated decision.
Are you happy with that, Chairman?
Yes, yeah. So that's how that would then work.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that so we're all on the same page with what we were proposing.
Yeah. So as you say, Emma, after the point where it says the initial period of 3 months, then a report is brought back to cabinet of the update of where we are, and at that point a further recommendation may or may not be required to extend
for another 3 months. Yeah,
that's brilliant. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so thank you for that, Fran. Emma, thank you for confirming that one. Are there any other questions from anyone relating to this particular subject that they want clarified? No, all quiet. Okay, so if I second Fran's recommendations, over to you, James, on the vote.
Right. Can you confirm, Mrs. Copplestone, if you support the proposal?
4, thank you.
Yes. Mr. Emsall?
4.
Mrs. Hempsall?
4. Was that a chicken I heard, Joe?
Mrs. Leggett?
4.
Mrs. Mancini Boyle?
4.
Mr. Vincent?
4.
And Mr. Wymark?
4.
Yep, that's carried.
Thank you, James. So that one's carried. So Richard, you have what you need to hopefully progress that for us. And thank you and your team for the amazing work that you're doing. So it's appreciated all the way through. So we don't get often chance to say it, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. So thank you everyone for attending. I'll close tonight's meeting. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and see you next time virtually. Good night, everybody.